Thank you. If we could stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the order, please.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Boer? Here. Mrs. Davis? Here. Mrs. Thomas? Here. Mr. Swager?
Here. We didn't have this on the agenda, but we'll go to that first. Sure. Public comment, Mr. Hill? Do you mind, just for the microphone, for the...
Good. Thank you. A couple of things. One, just really positive. The article in the Dispatch, being sixth in the greater Columbus area, pat on the back, board, even though they won't accept it, but certainly the teachers and staff, good heavens, it's a wonderful feel. I know the grade didn't come out, but whenever you're ahead of Upper Arlington, that kind of is a positive thing. And I didn't see Dublin in there. I didn't see Olentangy in there. I didn't see Worthington in there either. So that's positive. Hate to say it goes downhill from here. I heard, and this is rumor, I heard a couple of trailers were stolen, and that's just unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. Was at the choir concert over the weekend, and I heard that there was a leak in the roof. I don't know whether that's true or not. I maybe not. It may have been one of those kids things that they spilled water or something. Somebody said, it ballooned from there. Anyway, hopefully not, because I know that was just repaired not that long ago. The real reason, though, why I came was the lawsuit. I'm shocked. I don't want to take up the board's time, but I don't get it. I'm not here past judgment. I don't know where the separation was. I don't know what lack of communication, what lack of negotiations, but I have to admit, it doesn't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling. And I don't quite get it. I would be very much willing to talk to someone to either get the one side of the story. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. Tuesday night, I went to council and said the same thing to them. So some of you know me, some of you do not. I'm not somebody that's going to pass judgment without knowing the information. And so if there's some way that I can communicate with someone, just would like to know before I leave, which I do have to leave. Yeah, right. But I just would like to have something, that I can compare notes. Yes.
Yeah, we did place a statement on our website. I don't know if you've been able to see
Right.
that, but beyond that, Mr. Dixon and Mr. Jenny would probably be the two most knowledgeable. But as far as sharing of facts, obviously we're in litigation, so we can share facts,
Right.
not opinions.
Yes, absolutely.
So the
Understand.
sharing of facts is something that we attempt to do there on the website with our statement. We know what we were given an invoice for, and we know what was voted on and changed, and we know what the new invoice was for. That's what we can, state as fact on our side. For further details in that, Mr. Jenny would be able to tell you comparatives, what other school districts have paid, comparatives, what other, those types of things certainly come into the equation. We based ours off of our funding for this, off of what was in the village code at the time we let the project. So that's what our dollar amount was set for. That changed, obviously, in, June or July. I can't exactly remember the date of their
June.
June.
June 16th.
That number changed on June 16th.
So again, I'd just like to sit down and talk to someone. If it's Dale, I'd be more than happy to sit down. If it's somebody else, I could sit down and talk with them.
Right. I think we can share facts relative to the experience we've had and what
Right.
we see as far as litigation. I know the filing of the complaint. If while it's pending litigation or in litigation, I'm not sure about the documentation, but I believe that the claim itself is public record.
It is.
So I think we could even release the actual attorney's claim that they've prepared on our behalf, if that would be helpful.
And I remember with the new schools, I do remember. And I, not being on the board, not being on the council, not really figuring it out, but to me, I was shocked. I guess is for lack of a better word. Some of you know
I think we would echo that.
some of you know my dealings with the school, for the most part, have been positive. But back in the 90s, late 80s, I worked on so many school board or school levies. It's unbelievable that, and with organized opposition, it's very difficult sometimes. But I maybe have a better understanding of this. I'm not talking about brokering a deal or anything, but it's something that I want to pursue, have a little more information. So,
I think I'd be comfortable if you reached directly out to Dale and Dale could
Right, I will
provide
share
you.
what I can. Sure. And there's nothing really hidden about the facts, so I can share the facts with you.
okay, I'll call and make an appointment.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'd
good.
be happy to.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sharing past history with him as well.
It's all there.
At this time, do we want to move into executive session? Or do we want to do that? Yep.
It's on another subject, so it's like old business, new business. I have a question. Can I ask the question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I knew you were going to say. We used to get discipline reports in the school, from you or from someone, and we aren't getting discipline reports anymore. I think it's overdue that we get discipline reports in the school. I'm hearing things which I don't know are true or false. I felt very comfortable when I knew that I was getting those discipline reports or any kind of material in the school that has been destroyed or vandalized or whatever. We get bits and pieces. I'm not saying we don't do that, but I think in a formalized way, we need to see a discipline report so that we're all informed and we don't have to deal with rumors.
Mhm.
So that's all I wanted to say that this evening.
Tim, do you want to deal with the issues before executive session
I think we just go right into executive session and come
and
back.
wait to come back to do the
Intermediate.
discussions on,
Yes.
That's good.
okay,
So we can move other things along. and
All
People
right.
can be relieved.
okay.
If I can get a motion to go into executive
moved.
session for personnel.
So
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swagger?
Yes.
6:44.
Thank you. We just going to go down to the home ec.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
executive at, what's that, 8:57? Something like that. Sound good?
I know, I agree.
Told them to bring books.
We good, Deb? Back on. At this point, we're going to go ahead and get an update on from the, is it the insurance?
Insurance,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
I gotta get my notes.
Yep.
So today, we met with the insurance committee and Steve Fay was here and went over, we were given some materials. Be happy to share that with the board. It definitely showed that we had an increase again this year. It wasn't as large as it was last year, but it was still an increase. Last year was larger. Yes, that's what he said. There are some things that we can look at to possibly bring down. It's not going to cut it in half, that's for sure. But there's some little things that we can do that would bring it down. If that's what the board would like us to look at, we can do. We need to know, though, to let Steve know so that he can start looking at those numbers and pulling them. What was this recommendation?
Last year, our insurance premium was approximately 322,000. The increase on our premium was approximately 322,975 and some change. If that 50% of the current premium was in there. Am I correct on that number? Close. Any rate, 322,000, we'll just leave it at that. So, and this year, our increase is $284,477. That's, those are sizable increases. We can't keep, in my opinion, we can't keep experiencing increases like this. In 2 years, we've gone up about $600,000 of money, taxpayer dollars. That's why, as Ian has referenced, we've talked about how do we restructure the plan that would help us at least make this affordable. So we're looking at everything from co-pays to out-of-pocket maximums, emergency room visits, et cetera, drugs and generic drugs and so forth. So we're just talking and looking at everything there could possibly be that would help us cut some costs. So just a heads up that we're going to be studying this in the next few weeks. Ian, did you have anything else you needed to add or wanted to add?
There was something that Tim had asked me, and I'm looking for the answer to that because he did ask for it.
What was that in?
I can't find it. It was about if the spouse has different insurance that they can go to, and I'm looking for
Right.
that. He did look at that. We did have a survey last year.
We don't
When they
have all
signed
those
up.
numbers yet.
No, we don't.
Okay.
But he's going to look at that and come back to us with that information to see if that's something to look at.
Okay. I
Currently,
appreciate
we
that.
don't do that.
Spousal
Currently,
insurance, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Currently,
a
we
lot
don't
of the
do that.
employers, if your spouse has insurance, they make them take the insurance first.
but we don't do that
Correct.
right now.
Correct.
Right. But it was a good meeting, and we said next year we will absolutely bid out our consortium insurance, and bid it to other straightforward companies. We'll bid other consortiums, whatever it takes to look at good competitive bids, because we spend a lot of money on insurance. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the work on the insurance committee. All right, with that, I think our last topic is 4556, 45656, however we want to term those. So I had asked for additional details, and I believe everyone here has now a grade 4-5 configuration, a grade 5-6 configuration, and a 4-5 partial 6, how that would look
And
over at Searfoss.
Thank you for the bigger printouts.
Yeah, thank you. So, and then also, in addition to that, I had asked Ms. Pulley to provide enrollment figures for us. And I did not print that out, but I have it written down here.
You should have a copy in front of you.
I had a comparison,
I
actually.
can too.
Yeah. And what I'd asked for was the 2016-2017 enrollment of the high school when it was in this building. Comparatively, how many students did we have? So there were 1,561 students in the K-12. 9 through 12 would be 114, 133, 110, and 125, which adds up to 450, 60, 470, 482. So 482 students were in this building in the 2016-2017 year. I know that's one of the conversations we've had is,
Right.
we had 4 grades in here. We went to 3 grades. And
Say
now
that again,
we're-
Tim. What was that number?
Sure, 482. So in 9th grade, we had 114, 133 in 10th, 110 in 11, and 125 in 12th that year of 2016-17. I chose that because it was the last time we were in the building. So that was just as a reference point. And as you look through the 2021 last year at the high school, we had probably our smallest senior class in a long time go through there. So it looks a little lower, and now we're back up. So this year we're at 131, 125, 121, and 117, which adds up to 450, 70, 480, 494. Oh, yeah, thanks. 494. And I added it correctly in my head. Thanks. So we have 494 at the high school this year. And in 2016-17 in this building, we had 482. So it's pretty relatively the same. And that is, as our treasurers put it to me, is butts in seat. So that takes out our C-Tech. That reduces the students that aren't physically in the building. So that's not our total enrollment number, but that is butts in seats, because that's what matters as far as allocating space. So that's why I'd asked for that number specifically. So she was able to take out, of course, the CCP it's not as easy to track, and we don't know who, and it's not a whole day thing. So those aren't in there, but it's mainly the C-Tech students that we're able to subtract out there. So when you're looking at those numbers, those might necessarily be our graduation number, but it's the number of students in the building. So just letting everyone know those numbers. The total by building in 2016-17, we had 350 in Oregon. We had 357 in Searfoss. The middle school, we had 372, and then the high school, 482. So that was our enrollment of 1,561 in the 16-17 year. Compare that to now the 494. Of course, we have 774 in the elementary and 389 in the middle school. So the middle school went from 372 to 389, 17 students more, and the high school went from 482 to 494, 12. So that kind of shows our growth. I don't think this is any surprise to anyone, is mainly at the K-5. We have students transferring in. We have some growth at the school district. It's our 140s coming up through the elementary side that is where our main growth is. We've got close to 140 in our 4th and 5th grade classes. So I just want everyone to look at the numbers. That way, when we're talking about allocating space, we know that pre-expansion of Searfoss, we had 357 in there. And that was minus the 6 classrooms that we're adding on when we look at space. Anyone have any question on enrollment or any clarification?
We had modulars.
Correct. Yeah, the 2 modulars in the back of Searfoss. Correct.
How many did we have, Chris? 3, 4 modulars?
2.
I thought we had 2, and then we had one in front of the middle school. No,
We had 2 in the middle school.
That's at the other site.
Yeah.
got it.
Searfoss had 2 in the street area where we put the maintenance building.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, aren't we already doing that again? Did I not see somebody in there? Oh. Okay. I went through last week and there was somebody in the ticket booth. I actually called Ruth Ann and I said, are we meeting in that ticket booth again? And I called you last week about it. I was like, how did we get back to using the ticket booth?
How did we grow so quickly?
Okay. All right.
That's good to know.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, and I think everyone's familiar with the CIRFOS. We had kindergarten was half day. So when we look at that number, it was really half that number in the building physically at the time. So anyways, those are our numbers. That's where we're at as far as student space. And that's where we get to our configuration. And when we talk about 4th, 5th, 5th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 5th, and 6th, I think everyone knows my preference is to look at this as a campus and trying to make sure we make these buildings where you can move between buildings as necessarily, you know, CIRFOS renovated middle school and the high school to where if we want to have audio video and an 8th grader needs to walk over to the high school, that's what we'll do. And same thing. I think everyone has seen we're putting in the walkway through the back as part of this project as well, with covered walkway to allow for that ingress and egress around the campus. I think another important fact to speak about when we talk about campus up here, I think while the intermediate school project is completed, the next phase of that will be, we're going to have to look at some type of fencing and security back there, because if we're going to have students moving on the campus, I think we need to, you know, beef up what we have as far as not just cameras to see things, but really create some fencing and some gates and some walk points, and really looking at creating more of a campus atmosphere back here to utilize the land that we currently possess.
I think the good news in all this is that by adding on to CIRFOS and saving that building, yes, I see we're going to have temporarily some classrooms that will not be filled, but that doesn't trouble me, because when I see what's happening on Beach Road and what's happening with all the development around Johnstown, it's just an eye wink away before we see the influx of students. I'm going to digress just a minute. When we built St. Anne's Hospital, we had the 3rd floor empty, which was about 60 rooms, and we operated that way for a year and a half. It looked probably a little strange to people walking in. You don't even use the 3rd floor, but all of a sudden on a weekend, everybody pitched in and made those rooms, prepared those rooms for patients. So you just don't know when that next development is going to happen. We don't have any barometers of when it's going to happen. But we know there's a lot of developer activity, and they have made application to the local municipality for water and sewer, et cetera. I don't know when that's going to come, but I think we have to be realistic and say, how's that going to affect us, and in what building are we going to put those? The elementary school is without question overcrowded. So it's time to relieve that. And again, I don't want to be alarmed by an empty classroom. I'm grateful. It's the first time in this district I can recall that we've had an empty classroom that we could turn around and take a deep breath. So that's my 2 cents. And I see some wonderful planning here and a lot of work that's gone into this. So I'm anxious to study it in depth, because I see a couple potentials here that would be good.
So the conversation goes back to, if we pull 4th and 5th up out of the elementary, that gives them space down there, obviously. Frees up roughly 12 to 14, depending on, you know, when you get into the specials and all that. If you pull 5th up and move partial 6th down, that creates obviously about half of that space down at the elementary, and then creates a little more space over here That would be this fifth, sixth configuration that I believe Debbie put these together, but the team. What remains in sixth grade under the fifth, sixth is all of sixth grade over there, Deb, from what I see on this. Will they come back over for like gym and stuff? Would that be? Okay, so they come over for specials, the electives.
So
Okay.
you did fourth, fifth, and sixth on this one proposal, is that correct? Yes, yes. Right. I think another thing that's weighing heavy on my decision, I just speak for myself, is that we don't know what the federal government is going to do with this last proposal in pre-K. Are we going to be mandated by the federal government to house pre-K in public schools? I don't know that. If that were to come to be the case, which I think we're going to know in the next few weeks, I don't think it's months from that decision. I think it's weeks. It may even be days. For now, I didn't watch the news today. But that's something we have to think about. Where would we put them? We certainly would not put them in this Surface school. We would have to put them in the elementary school. So thinking of where pre-K could go, I think, I mean, for me, that's in the back of my mind. And I don't know how many classes that would take up. I know that's a prevalent political issue in inner city because people need childcare. So there's a lot of lobbying pressure for that to pass. Personally, I'm not in favor of that. And there are a lot of details to be worked out, whether they actually put degreed teachers in preschool areas or whether you actually can have another type of teacher. I don't know, and I really am not going to focus on that, but I'm weighing whether that's going to happen to us. I just don't know. So it's hard to make that decision for me tonight until I can see where we're going nationally. I know that's been in the Ohio legislature more than one time. It didn't pass the last two times it came to the floor, but I don't know where it is now. So if anybody has any information, I'd be real interested. Dale, do you have an update on that?
No, I know it's in the budget.
It's in the
Federal
budget.
budget, but that'll take probably years to play out by the time you get into states accepting or not accepting those regulations or developing regulations. What are they going to implement? How are they going to require schools that don't have the infrastructure in place to accommodate it to do it? I think that's, even if it passes in the budget and the money's available, I think the greater challenge will be the implementation phase, which from experience, I think that's going to take quite a while to play out.
I think historically, I would have agreed with you. And currently, I'm not sure that I would share that as being years away, but historically, I would say that would be a grinding situation. I don't know that I think that's going to be it. The COVID issue has brought to light that so many people don't have childcare. So the push is not whether it's best for education, but rather whether it's best for childcare. And we're a welcome vessel for those people who immediately want the resources that we have in our school system to work with preschool kids. So again, I don't know. That's my research on the subject. I welcome anybody's comments. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. And I didn't really, if I gave the misunderstanding that I was focusing on those things, no. It's just a part of an overall research and decision. It certainly wasn't that I'm focusing on preschool or whatever, but I guess I'm just I'm not concerned about having empty classrooms. I'm concerned about overcrowding, whether it's your building or anybody else's building.
I think we get it under any scenario. You get fourth, fifth, or sixth. Fourth, fifth. Yeah. We gave it fifth, sixth, or sixth. Agreed.
So I have a question. I see 7 classrooms on the 4-5 configuration for 4th grade, but on the 4-5, I only see 6 for 4th.
Do you mind backing up? I'm not, I didn't catch which one we're referencing.
I didn't either.
I heard 4 or 5 twice, that's why I was confused.
On the 4th grade, if you look at the 4th and 5th grade, you see
Okay.
there's 6 classrooms.
Yep.
And on the 4-5 configuration, partial grade 6.
The partial 6, gotcha,
There's 7.
gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. That was my next question.
I mean, the only partial we can move is 6th. We either move all, 4th and 5th, you can't partial because they're down at the elementary. 6th grade is the only grade level that you can do a partial because we're on the campus. So that's really where, we either make the decision to bring all of 4th and 5th up, or we're making the decision to bring all of 5th, 6th, or 5th, 4th. 4th is not an option to partial out. So when I look at our growth and our growth patterns, though, I do see that it's almost exclusively at the K-5 level. I mean, our extra growth, we're 7 less students at the middle school this year than we were last year. We're 12 more than we were 5 years ago. We're not seeing. Now, I definitely see in the K-5 a lot more growth. Because when I look at the K-5, I'm seeing numbers go from 115 to 137 in each class. So we're seeing a lot more growth in the K-5 than we are. Not to say we're not getting students 6 through 8 adding. We're just nowhere near the growth that I'm seeing in that K-5.
Right, it worked out 50, of the 106 originally increase this year, we had 50% were elementary, which was K through 5, and 25% were middle school, and 25% were high school students on this year's growth.
But I think one of the things to look at is our growth might be K-5, but in 3 years, they're going to be in the middle school. And so each grade is going to have 20, 30 more kids. So maybe now, so we have to think, okay, maybe the numbers will stay a little lower in the middle school, but if we don't make that jump and give that room to the middle school, they're going to be way overcrowded. So do we have?
What about,
And the challenging thing too is developmentally, isn't 5th and 6th graders more similar developmentally than in fourth grade? Or am I mistaken in what I believe? So aren't they, developmentally or age appropriateness? There's a jump as you go through the grades, right? So don't you change, or everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy, and I may be crazy, but isn't there a change? Isn't fifth and sixth grade more similar
Yes.
Your
developmentally, maturity level? Are more similar, yes. Together, that's what I've always been told.
I mean, I'm partial to the format.
And I
Agreed.
know we're really sort of just talking numbers now,
Mhm.
but I'm already looking ahead at the challenges listed on here and the loss of this for 4 or 5, the loss of this, loss of, let's see, what was it? Reduction of reading and math title intervention, loss of innovation, loss of common, so I just, those
Why
are,
would we have a loss when we,
I'm looking at the.
I know, but
Well, I
I
know,
don't
but that's
understand
somebody's
why-
opinion. Do you really think we
why
lost it, or are
would we
we
have a
going,
loss?
why can't we
It's for
buy
all
that?
Well, because our innovation teacher's not going to be here, and then we would have
Why
to,
wouldn't they?
unless we're looking at significantly increasing our staffing.
Or why
that's-
don't they
So
travel?
given the current,
If
Can
they're
they not
handling-
travel?
If they're handling it all down in the one location, why wouldn't they be able to?
I don't
handle
know.
both?
I don't know.
I guess I look at this separately.
No.
If we're seeing the growth, we know the
they
additional
can't even
teachers are coming.
travel to within the building
Regardless.
now.
We're going to add staff regardless of how we
We
develop this
are.
because we're seeing
gonna
growth.
add staff.
Whether, I mean, me personally, I look at this, we need to make the most judicious
That's true.
decision based
That
on
is true.
where we're going to be. The staffing that we may have to add for 1 year or 2 years is insignificant when we're talking about the overall plan for the district, whatever that is. Because if we look at it and say, well, we'd have to add an innovation, we're going to have to add one of those, not specifically that one, but we're going to have to add people no matter what. When we see growth like we are seeing here and what's realistically coming. I mean, I think we're very fortunate that we're able to renovate a building, add classroom space without seeking any additional dollars or any bond issue. That, for me, is our
We
goal.
saved a school.
We have to maximize this space to go as long as we possibly can without ever having to build another school. So that's where I'm looking at it from is what can we do to maximize our campus area? I am more partial to the 4th, 5th, partial 6th because of that reason that I see it going there. It's where we start is my question. What do we start with next year? I think regardless of what we all want, I think we're going to have to evolve into utilizing that space maybe different on different years. We may have such a big 5th grade class come up one year that there's 160 in it, but the next year it's 120. And we may have to adjust our classroom space accordingly. And teachers may have to move accordingly. I mean, that's just the reality of, so to me, I think this is swing space or however we want to use it when we talk. There's 2 primary grades going to be in there.
It's true.
And then the rest of it is based on the enrollment of those 2 grades. If there's extra space, partial 6th grade. If there's not, then there's, I mean, it's going to become what it becomes in my mind based on enrollment. Because we're not, I mean, I have no desire to get into additional buildings until we absolutely 100% are maxed out.
And I don't want to cut any programs. So to be more realistic with that, Amanda, I don't have a problem. If we have to add people, we're going to have to add some staff because I don't want somebody shortchanged that we don't have enough staff.
Processing.
Wait, stop. I just clarified that. I wouldn't want to cut any people or staff or not supply the Searfoss building with the talent and professionalism of educators to fit that need. So when I said that's somebody's opinion, the worksheet we have here does define that you would perhaps cut that or whatever. I don't want to cut anything. So I
Well-
just want to, I take that back. I will walk that back. I didn't mean it as an opinion. It's just a worksheet that I felt didn't clearly represent what we would or could or should do for the Searfoss school. So yes, it is a beginning. It is an opinion. And to that same resource, if we feel we need whatever it is, we will have to do that. If we choose plan A, B, or C, we're going to have to facilitate the proper educational community for
Well,
that.
I think that's the part of the challenge for me is I'm basing my knowledge on what I think is the best decision given these three models, which is being fiscally responsible. And I wouldn't want to cut anything either, but that's one of the reasons I'm not looking at this thinking, well, the sky's the limit financially. I'm looking at these are the numbers. And so if you're saying, well, we could do 4 or 5, but we could add in all that stuff and not miss out and add, all the parapros. That's a different conversation, I guess. So that's what I guess I'm not understanding is that I'm looking at this based on, and knowing that there could be some tweaks and things like that, and we might decide to add a little bit. But if you're saying, okay, well, we like 4 or 5, but we see the loss of this, what if we didn't have to do that? I like that idea, but that's not the option we're being presented. Right.
Yeah, the option 1, 2, and 3, I'm looking at those right
Yeah,
now.
that's what I'm.
I got them all.
Right.
As I was saying, we've enhanced the academic opportunities of the student when we built the new elementary. So when we look at what Searfoss was, we had, so when we talk about an increase, if we'd have increased the academic standard at Searfoss when it stayed Searfoss, a lot of these costs would have been borne at
We
that
would have-
time as
We would
well.
have had 'em.
It's just that
Mhm.
we simply didn't have the space to do it.
To
I
do
mean,
this.
we didn't have the space for all-day kindergarten. So obviously we've added a lot of kindergarten teachers because we needed all-day kindergarten. So there was a cost built into the new elementary as well when we moved down there that we add staff. If we move back, when we move back to the new intermediate school, there will be additional costs because we have additional staff. No matter how we want to slice it and talk, there will be additional staff. There's going to have to be. We have more students. So I'm looking at it from a purely operational side, like how does it best work and give us the most room for the future. What creates the space at K5 and what creates a little room for the 6-8. That's where I keep, in my mind, keep going back to the 4-5 partial 6, because it gives the middle school a little bit of relief, because if I count that up, we were moving 5 6th grade classes. I think it was 4 or 5. 4.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Why wouldn't you go 5, 6 now? What Debbie is saying, that's your most cost-effective thing. Why don't you go 5, 6 now, and as growth changes, why don't we do what you suggested, is rearrange the schools to where the growth really is?
I guess I could do the opposite and say, why don't you go with 4 or 5 and grow into partial 6 when you need it, because we're not out of classroom space now at the middle school. We just heard we had an empty classroom.
But there's an extra cost associated with doing that, right? And again, developmentally, the 4th graders are not the same as the 5th and 6th graders.
I think most intermediate schools that I've seen are 4, 5, 6. You go K3 for the and then 4, 5, 6. That's not unusual to see 4, 5, and 6 together.
They don't have any empty.
Could you speak a little louder, Chris? I'm
Right.
not here. What about, let's visit just a minute the administration of, I'm really confused what I'd like to do, or conflicted about what I want to do with administration of that building. When you have 4, 5, 6, let's say we do the 4, 5, 6, partial 6, you still have people that need the guidance of a principal on site, correct? I know, I was just trying to throw it in there to see how
I mean,
the
if I'm-
numbers work out.
If I'm doing that, I mean, if we're just looking at space, and I would say you'd move 5th and partial 6th, not even all of 6, and move 5th and partial 6th, and then grow into the 4th or the other way, because that would provide space at the elementary, it'd provide space at the intermediate, and it would provide space at the middle school. But it wouldn't commit that ultimately 4, 5, and partial 6 is going to be here. I don't know how we're not getting there. Is anyone?
Yeah, but when?
It's just how we start.
It's when,
Correct.
you're gonna eventually have to have it that way, Tim, right? But why go to the expense today to do that? Why not wait till you're forced to do it? And at some point in time, I think what you said earlier was really correct, is that we may be reconfiguring these things multiple times over the years, depending on how many students we have in each grade, right? And our staff, our teachers need to be flexible. And I see Debbie's head shaking, yes, 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 from the teachers. And as long as we have a staff and organization that's flexible, I think we can work through whatever we see. But why add that expense today when we don't have to?
Echoing all of the sentiments, but I know that we don't want anybody to lose any. I really keep going back to looking at particularly 4th graders, if we were to move them to this building, all of the things that they wouldn't be getting. And I'm just really hard pressed to think that that's a sound choice.
I think we need to address the fact that they will be here eventually, regardless of what decision we make today. So let's just solve that issue now. If we need staffing, we need staffing. 4th grade will eventually be in that building. I don't see any way that it won't be. It may be in 2 years, it may be in 5 years, but it will be in that building. The numbers bear out that elementary will not be big enough to not have fourth grade come up here. It's when do they come up here and how do we accomplish that? That's all, in my mind, that's all we're discussing is when does the fourth grade come up? I just don't see in any scenario that the numbers that and growth that we're seeing down there at the elementary, that clearing just fifth grade out of there will solve that problem. It'll solve it for a short period of time.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Eventually, it's going to happen. And it's great to have a plan to know what we're going to do 2 years or 5 years from now. You don't necessarily have to execute those plans today.
Oh, I agree.
So that's the only thing. You know, and I agree with Amanda. I echo everything that Amanda's saying, is that, you know, we're going to be forced to make changes that we don't want to necessarily make, right? Because of growth. And some teachers and administrators may have to move when they don't want to move. Just as Debbie Paderi, right? You taught second and third grade. You're a fifth grade teacher, right? So these things are going to happen. And as long as we have a staff that's willing to move to where we need to have them move, then we're going to be fine. And not add those, not cause too much of a dislocation today because we're not really forced to do that at this time. But again, plan for the future, because the dislocation is going to happen in the future.
And I agree. I think whether fourth grade is here next year or in a couple of years, it's inevitable. But I don't want to forget about the middle school. And so for me, I don't want to leave them out and giving them the opportunity to expand, because if we decide to put fourth and fifth grade in here and we don't give the space, then we might be really in a bind in 2 years when some of our fifth grade now is a larger class. They're going to be in the middle school. So I think it'd be fair, at least in the beginning, get our bearings straight, kind of work it out, alleviate a little in the elementary, alleviate a little in the middle, and then let's watch our growth.
I agree.
And also, I know that unfortunate that, Marcy and Jana can't be here, and totally understand that it's late. But my assumption is that Debbie and Dale and Chris and our elementary principals, you guys are the experts. You know the flow, you know the need, you know the staffing, you know all of the requirements it takes to get our kids to where they need to be academically. So I'm not going to pretend that I know something more than you guys know.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think we are the fiscal watchdog, and we have to look out for the fiscal of this district. And when I look at growth, I want to make sure we're not looking at 1 year, 2 years. We're looking at 5 years, 10 years, because that's where our vision has to be as a board.
Well, I guess I'm not seeing support services that we have to lose. Amanda, what are you thinking we have to lose? Whatever configuration. I kind of, at this point, I'm looking fondly at 4, 5, and 6. And I'm not seeing what we might lose, because I think we're going to have to add staff anyway. So I'm looking that could be a possibility.
Yeah, and that isn't really included. Sorry, Debbie. Yeah, and I agree. And Tim saying, we are the ones who are, the fiscal, people making sure we're being fiscally responsible. But you look at that 5-6 configuration, and it's fiscally, I think, the most sound
Yeah, you're looking at
decision.
what, 400
So,
and,
I
what's
just
the,
am-
what's the math? 400 and,
Right.
what, $86,000 is the difference if you go to and make the move.
Or
all at once.
76 if
Or
you
76,
look the other
yeah.
one. that's, I mean, there's so many different configurations and ways to look at this. For me, and don't take this wrong, once you move, if we made that fifth, sixth in my mind, and all of six moves over there, it is very difficult to move back out. I get concerned once you get set into a footprint. That's why if we move something over there, that's why I'm partial to only even moving part of sixth grade over there and set the tone that that's how a building would work. Because once you move them in, it's difficult to move
I think that's a very
everybody
good,
back out.
that's a good point.
That's my struggle with just moving everybody over there is it becomes very difficult. People set up shop and you get all these other things and you get everything in place and then you say, oh, well, next year you only half of you are going to be here. Right. If you start out fifth and partial sixth, it creates fifth grade is 7 to 8 classrooms opened up at the elementary. Part of sixth that would open up what appears to be 4 to 5 classrooms for you at the middle school if you move partial over. And it then would leave 5 classrooms open. It would spread out the vacancies amongst the 3 buildings without overloading too much.
So let's scrap this and get a 5 partial 6 in here.
I mean,
I mean,
I'm just
it's
trying to look at
That's a
setting the
good
tone
point.
for where we should be at the end of this, but
No.
not going too far one direction or the other that we absorb too many costs as a result of that. I don't know. I mean, everyone else, I think,
We've always moved people around. I don't really understand.
it's going to happen at some point, I don't see how it's not. If we're going to utilize our current space in the future, do we not see this happening, I guess? Because that's against everything I've heard from the administration team is that everyone kind of envisions that being the case. Would we not want to try it before we get forced to do it? That'd be my concern is if we don't know, if it doesn't work, how do we ever know? And now we're forced to deal with it. I would like to see the growing pains before we have to experience the growing pains if we're going to have some and see how that works. How does this building operate? How does the administrator, how does the principal or the assistant, whatever we decide, how does that model work before we're completely full building of the children? If we have a few classrooms lesser issues, it gives us some room to grow and see how things happen. In my mind, this is my thought process on it. It allows us to almost do a test run of what that school would look like when it is completed.
How in the world?
And if that's, I'm fine. I mean, then we go with 4 or 5, because if we don't want to split 6 and go to the partial 6, it makes it easier. Then we just do 4 or 5 and 6 stays, and you don't have to worry about splitting those teachers, because eventually if we're saying we're not getting there in the future, then we don't do it now. If we're not going to go partial now, we don't do it in the future. And if that's, then to me, it makes it easier in the sense of the discussion, because you just go with 4 or 5.
Did you work with this, Chris? Did you work with this 4-5 partial 6 configuration? Did you look at this? And that doesn't have an appeal to you at all? Well, that would do it.
Well, and that's why I was leaning toward the 4 or 5 partial 6, is it leaves space in every building. It gives us a less stressed building to see how it flows, see how the kids flow back and forth when we're not having a full building of it. And if we have issues, it's a lot less to deal with to try it on a smaller scale than when we have every classroom filled. And now we're going to try it for the first time. We have a lot more movement. To me, it gives you a couple of years to do a test run of what that building and how it would operate fully. If we're saying we're never thinking that we ever split 6th grade into that building, and we think 6th grade needs to go down, then we're having a full other conversation, because I don't think the elementary is ever going to be big enough if we're only moving Fifth out of there. I don't think that that creates enough space. It certainly doesn't create enough of the lunchroom issues we have, the number of lunches. From the conversations I've had with the administration is we all envision Fourth, Fifth eventually moving out of that building. When, that's based on growth. But if we're saying Sixth has to come down and Fourth can never come up, because if Sixth comes down fully, there is no room for Fourth. It's Fifth, Sixth then at that point. So now we're talking about another building project, which is the furthest thing from my mind as far as the district's concerned.
Chris, I see this ELA 6th grade, 2 full classrooms. Is that how many students we have? I don't know. Is that how many we have? And do they stay in the room do they stay in that room the whole time?
Mhm.
That's what I assumed they did. I'm asking that. Okay. It wouldn't be logical to condense that into one room because you have more students than that. Okay, I'm just asking questions. I don't know. Okay, good with that.
I guess, I mean, Alan, Amanda, we've all been discussing this for an awful long time about it. I guess, what are your thoughts on the 6th grade never coming down or coming all or nothing on the 6th grade is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. If you, whatever you have to do in the future, you have to do it.
Right.
There's no option, right? But to do something ahead of time before you have to do it, that's where I really have the problem, right? And we've done some unusual things, right? Having kindergarten and 5th grade in the same building, that was kind of an unusual mixture, don't you think? At one time, was that, Debbie's back there smiling. But yeah, the fifth graders could be bus buddies for the kindergartners. But that was an interesting mix, right? Years ago. So to have an interesting mix, I think we can make it work. It's just, why are we wanting to do that today when we might not have to do it? We can't really predict where the growth is going to be, right? And it's logical to believe that, as Amanda said, that elementary is going to move through the middle school, right? The 3rd graders are going to become 4th graders. 4th graders are going to be 5th graders. So as Chris pointed out, it's good to have space in all the buildings. And then as you need to move people around, you move people around. And you add and adjust your staff, and you add and adjust where you have people located. And hopefully we don't ever go back to having the kindergartners with 5th graders. But if that really makes sense in the future, then we're going to have to do that. So we're going to have to make whatever it is work. But why make such a dramatic move all at once? Why don't we go step by step?
Well, I guess that's why I think 5th and partial 6th accomplishes that, because it's the only plan that leaves empty classrooms at each building. The others
it does,
don't.
But it does in the future. You don't have to do that today. It's all a future.
What do you mean? If we move 5th, 6th today, it leaves no room in the new building. We have no extra space. So we've maxed out a building already. The 5th and partial 6th is the only one that leaves spaces in all 3 buildings.
You could do that today if you wanted to. There's just not a need to do it at this moment.
I guess it goes back to, what are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to accomplish growth in each building, or are we trying to make the 5th, 6th? I mean, the conversation I heard was everyone needs a little bit of room for growth, but the 5th, 6th configuration doesn't leave that, or neither does the 4th, 5th. The only one that
I
leaves
believe your
growth.
Your 5th, 6th model in that room does allow for extra rooms.
Derek had a question.
They're not marked then.
They're filled in with temporary placeholders. For instance, on the 5th, 6th plan, just want to clarify, you've got a speech OT, PT taking up a whole classroom. You've got potential EMIS data coordinator, student services coordinator in one room. Those are just kind of placeholders temporarily. That corner 124 classroom is left empty. By my count, you can come up with about 4 extra classrooms on a 5-6 configuration for future.
Do we have any other
Correct me if I'm
placeholders
wrong,
in these
Mrs.
other
Seibel,
ones?
is that correct?
That's good to know that those were.
Debbie, do you want to explain the blue rooms?
Well,
I know what
Yeah,
You wanna
explain the
explain the
blue
blue?
rooms.
you're.
In the current elementary school, we have some people teaching in storerooms. Am I not correct? No, not homerooms, but they're teaching classes in, sorry? Math? Storage rooms,
Small
Right.
groups,
small groups. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
one-on-one and small group instruction.
Chris, what's in the
We did that.
resource, wait a minute, if I got the right thing. I'm looking at your map of your school. In the resource room, could you explain that? And then it's next to, I think, Jenny Her's room. Christy Rose, okay, that's what I thought she was, but.
the other question we did have is if you did partial sixth, I know these are placeholders, Deb, but would we not move sixth up closer to the front of the building if they had to traverse? Yeah,
Right.
if they had to traverse between the two buildings,
I was wondering the same.
because we could,
That's what we
it's
said.
80 feet away if we go. Teachers would be able to go through the PAC. We wouldn't allow students, but you know what I mean? If we wanted to have
Right.
that walking,
It's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Second minute.
right. But ELA wouldn't, the sixth ELA that in social
ELAs
study wouldn't
could
need
be
those.
moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that wasn't, there wasn't something I'm
Wasn't
missing.
the
They're
final drawing.
placeholders. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the water would be probably science rooms in the back.
Yeah. And for the public that may be still watching or listening, the only reason we're even discussing fourth and sixth is we don't want fifth graders to be in the building by themselves, separated from other students and other interactions and stuff. So that's why we're not simply just moving fifth grade up there, because that would be the easy thing to do, is you move fifth grade up and you have somebody run that. But we're looking at making sure there's social interactions occurring with those kids in those grade levels. So that is the one reason. I just want to make sure other people watching or listening would understand that that was a discussion point earlier. Did you say that is not used? Is used. Okay. Gotcha.
So basically, in a 4-5 partial 6 configuration, that gives you 4 more classrooms, correct? Social studies and ELA. So we have 2 ELAs and 2 social studies. Oh,
Okay, they've got 4 on the
They've
plan.
got 4.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay, but we have an empty room there, which, okay, I got it. Okay, and
Yep.
here I was reading social studies. Okay.
all right, so we can vote on 3 different configurations here.
Why don't you just take the most
Can we
popular?
like narrow it down to
Yeah.
2 and then go at it?
I would make the motion
I
to
know,
move
I know.
5th and partial,
I know that.
5th and partial 6th, to allow for space at
Are
each
you
of the
saying
3.
4th, 5th, partial 6th?
I'm saying 5th and partial 6th the first year,
Okay.
leaving 4th, and then bringing up 4th as growth occurs, or now we have to have further discussion about how that administration works, and those are the things that, because that's not necessarily, I mean, it's the 4th, 5th, partial 6th grade plan here, but what does that look like at the end? I don't know that we've had any of those discussions as far as, or at least I have certainly not had those discussions about how the administration side of that works. I know you mentioned it earlier, but we
Yeah,
haven't had those.
I don't know.
I mean, to me, 4 or 5 only is off the table. Like, I would narrow it. We've got to have some conversation for, I don't love partial 6, but we have to consider them in some way.
But why do we want to do partial 6?
I don't want to, I'm
You
just
know,
saying.
but why do we
Vote
want to do
that
that
way.
with
Just
just
vote.
the 5th, right? Why do we want to do 5th and partial 6?
No,
Why
I
don't
was-
we do-
I was just
Yeah.
trying to get the temperature of them as far as like, do we maybe all at least in consensus think that 4 or 5 only is,
I could rule that out.
we can rule that out so we can
Okay,
try to move us forward.
yep, 4 and 5. only.
And to go back, the 5th partial 6th is the only one that leaves space at all 3 buildings. It's the only plan that leaves us space at all 3 buildings.
That's not true.
Well,
5, 6
without
in
growth,
that building.
but if you count the growth that you're counting in, it doesn't. Day 1 it does, but if you add the 2
Still
rooms
have
that you're
4
counting on
classrooms.
growth,
We have 3 plans.
You have 3.
Which plan do we want? We put 5, 6 configuration, or we put 4, 5, partial 6 configuration?
But doesn't 5, 6 still have 4 empty classrooms? In Searfoss, yeah. So 5, 6 has 4
3.
empty classrooms. in
3.
Searfoss.
with no growth though. So
With
the
no
next
growth.
year you're at
So
1.
the next year you move somebody else in there.
No.
No.
Well, if
Well,
I guess
anyway
when we
go,
say
we're
we
gonna
can't
have
predict
classrooms.
enrollment, I think we have a good idea of what's coming. When you look at the 3rd grade and see what's in that class, I'm assuming those kids will be in 4th grade the next year, and 4th will be in the 5th grade. So when you look at those numbers, and then look at our kindergarten numbers, having gone up by more than 12%.
I agree, that's your driver, is when the elementary fills. You have to-
Right. Mhm.
Yeah. It's just gonna be fluid movement, I think is what you're gonna see.
All right, so we've moved past 4 and 5. We can take 4 and 5 off the table.
And I apologize because the 4, 5 partial 6 is still wrapping my head around that. The 4, 5 partial 6, I wasn't as versed in that.
We still have school tomorrow.
Some of this has to do with the way we set up the configuration with the state under IRN numbers. And while we can debate what classes go in what buildings, at the end of the day, we have to set them up on various different planes, either as a separate intermediate or keep them under, as we originally proposed, keep them under the middle school umbrella initially until such a point this shakes out with this growth. We see what comes out, and then we start filling in the holes with the belief that ultimately this will be a standalone intermediate building. On the issue of splitting the sixth grade, Tim, I would just submit that I wouldn't know why we would do that initially in order to experiment for what might possibly be down the road. I would
Are we
say,
saying
I would
it
say
might
educationally.
possibly? I guess that's stunning to me if we're saying might possibly occur, because
I-
I don't see any scenario where it doesn't occur.
It's
That a
going to
split
occur.
in a grade
Yes.
occurs? Maybe. Maybe, but is that 2
Well, that
years,
makes
3
it
years?
easier,
I mean,
'cause
do we split it initially?
That brings 4 or 5 back on the table for me then, and you just go with 4 or
Does-
5
does
and be
that-
done.
well-
If, right. Right.
We are simply suggesting that we do this on a progression and move as necessary. Try to keep grades together for continuity.
Right. And
Of
4 or
learning.
5s together now, so you keep them together.
Well, 5, 6 together in the Surface building initially for whatever years, 2, 3 years. Keeping them together rather than splitting them up front just doesn't make sense from a management standpoint or an educational standpoint. We also say 5, 6 going into the Surface building is your most economical, under the middle school is the most economical way to go for the district initially, until we each year analyze this growth and then move where necessary. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak with everybody else speaking. I've
No,
written
sure.
and spoken on this for a year, and I'll just quiet right now.
I just really worry if we only do 4 or 5. We look at some of our numbers in the elementary, particularly like the 5th grade. We're going to be in a position if we put 4 or 5 here in 2 years, that middle school is going to be busting at the seams.
It's only 5 students more than the 8th grade class now.
I mean,
But in 3 years,
I added it up myself, and I'm getting the same thing Tim is.
The student count is the largest class is 8th grade moves on. The next largest class is 5th that comes in. We're only adding 5 students more than what we currently have over the next 3 years. Now, if growth occurs, but again, as everyone tells me, we can't predict growth, but we're trying to predict growth.
I know, but what about when all of those grades come in and they're filling the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade now? We're not just talking about the 5th moving to the 6th. We're talking
If you
3,
look
4,
at,
5 moving in. They're
And
going to
that-
be 6, 7, 8.
if you add up 3, 4, and 5 and compare it to 6, 7, and 8, it's 4 students difference. The numbers are the
But
same.
aren't we planning for growth, not our numbers today?
And that's why I insist that partial 6 is going to have to move at some point, because if you're planning for growth, isn't 4th and 5th also going to grow?
No.
So that's why.
I just
when
thought our
hear-
goal was to have a little space in every building.
And that's what I think 5th and partial 6 gets us. What does, if we move all the 5th
I
and
like
6th.
that.
Right.
Buys you time to develop what the most effective split might look like. If you have them together and then year to year analyze,
I mean, let's be realistic. Are
Where
we going
the
to get
growth is
50
coming.
new 5th graders, but only get 1 new 4th grader? I mean, we're going to see
No.
growth across. We're not going to see a
Sure.
gigantic spike in one class and not the other.
I
It's
just
just not
thought-
going to occur.
I thought we were all on the same page that 4 or 5 only was off the table, and then it seemed like everyone's like reintroducing it. So I'm just trying to figure out where we are. Because you said if
I-
that's the case, 4 or 5 is back on the table for me.
Correct.
So-
If they're
and as far
saying
as the
that
middle
there's
school-
no ever going to split 6th grade, if they're under the assumption that 6th grade is never getting split,
You're going to split it when you have to. That's what we've always done in the past, is when we have to do something, we do it. Because we're trying to do 2 things, right? We're trying to give our students the best educational experience that they can have. We're also trying to control our costs. Costs are operating costs, which, if you go to 4 or 5, it's $476,000. And it's also cost is building, right? So we're trying to be as efficient as we can with the taxpayers' money. And we're trying to give our students the best educational experience. And we'll adapt to whatever we need to do in order to have those 2 things happen.
Chris,
yeah, I mean, we're talking a difference of $75,680 one way or the other. Right, and that's just making assumptions.
I had a question for Chris real quick, and I don't want to put you on the spot and make you uncomfortable. I know you said whatever the board decides, you guys will make happen and you will make the best of it. And I super appreciate that and I trust you. But from your perspective, would it make more sense to not give you any space in that building at all or to split you? Like if you had to make that decision as an administrator, would you rather just say, we'll make it all work and keep our sixth graders, or would you say splitting them? Or you'll have to think about it. But if the option where you don't get any part of the building for sixth graders, or you get part of the building for half of the sixth graders, is there one that's the lesser of? I agree.
Eventually, yes. Yeah, you can. Yeah, they're connecting the
And
buildings.
we're
It's-
connecting the buildings.
Correct, we could.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. No. I mean, we don't have we're wanting to maximize the space. How everything else plays out from the IRNs is really how the enrollment forces us to do it. We're connecting the buildings and making this a campus.
I think we get that. Yeah, we do. Debbie, do you have a chime in on your thoughts on partial or? Right. That is when we cut.
That's what we cut. If we keep
Option
all-
Right.
3, we cut all of those things.
So we add
If
all
we
the
choose to.
services back,
Right.
it's
If we choose to.
$476,000.
It's how much now?
476,000 more. Yeah, the
Yeah.
difference is 476. So if we add up everything and keep it the way we have it today, it would cost 476. If we cut the services, it's only 75,000 more.
And I would never fathom
cutting
okaying that and cutting any of that.
I don't think anyone on this board would.
No.
That's a 5-0 answer.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will cut them.
Good.
I think that's not a
That was a
premise to make a vote.
that was a concern. I mean, not a big, but
All right, we
you know,
have
that
two
was an
options here. We
underlying.
can just make a
two
motion
options.
and make a vote, or we
Yep.
can ask Ms. Almendinger if she wants to take some time to think about the split and come back to us and we can talk about it again later. It was your question. You posed her. That's why I was leaving that up to.
I mean, I was ready to vote 2 weeks ago, and now you've presented a whole like third option to me. So, but I do know that we need to get moving on decision making. So, I don't need. I do not need an answer for the question for me to make my decision.
Okay.
But thank you.
All right. Do we have any motions?
I'll make the motion for 5-6.
I'll second.
Building.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
No.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
No.
Mrs. Thomas? No.
Do we have any other motions?
I'll make a motion for 4-5 configuration.
No, 4-5 versus 6. Oh,
We have a motion for 4-5. Do we hear a
wait
second?
minute, Wait a minute.
Wait. Was it 4-5 only?
4-5.
4-5 only.
Hearing no seconds? Okay, do I have a motion for any other configurations?
I'll do 4, 5. This, I feel like we're bidding. I'll do 4, 5 with a partial 6.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
No.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
No.
Mr. Swager?
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, motion's carried.
motion carried. Any other conversation?
Um, no, I don't-
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
motion carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Hi there.